that's new.
Yeah, I'm a little scared. Oh, sorry. That's fucking scary. Hey guys, welcome to Layman's Terms Podcast, the place where we talk about really big topics using the smallest words possible. I'm Danny the bartender.
And I'm Tommy the trash man.
And together we're just two guys trying to explain the ever-changing world around us the only way that we know how. And today it's been it's every time, I feel like every time we come on here, we're like, sorry about being late, but the world is changing. Things are changing. Our lives are changing and we're trying to regroup. So we're trying to get on a better schedule. But there's been a lot of stuff, I guess. I mean, there's been so many things. Sometimes we think about things to talk about and then time passes and they're irrelevant. But I guess, me and Tommy recently, or at least myself, have become a little bit interested in some Jordan Peterson stuff. And Tommy was intrigued by something he saw. So what was it, an interview, Tom?
Yeah, so for the little bit of the delay, life happens. It's time to make the donuts. Danny's back at work, working a lot of hours. And a little disclaimer. I was at a little birthday get together prior to this podcast, so I've been drinking a little bit, so it might get a little bit sloppy. But at the same time, we were like, dude, we gotta put something out because it's been a little while. And again, you're working a little bit later. I'm up early, so it's kind of tough to kind of like get our schedules to mesh.
But we're gonna figure it out.
Yes. But yes, so Jordan Peterson, which has been for the past, I don't know, I guess 4 or 5 years, I guess Jordan Peterson's kind of been in the spotlight, and he has been a lightning rod for controversy. We've obviously talked about him, I think, on this podcast at some point. I'm sure that we mentioned him. And I bought his book, the first book that he put out, the 12 Steps to Order, whatever. And he was recently on Ben Shapiro's podcast, and there were some things that he kind of mentioned on there that I was like, dude, it was like a punch in the gut for me. So he was talking to Ben Shapiro, and he was like, okay, so in your life, he was like, the most important thing in your life, or potentially the most love that you're going to get in life, is from your children. If you don't have children, then there's marriage. And that is the most, important relationship that you'll have outside of that. If you don't have that, the next thing would be a career that you love. If you don't have that, you better be artistic in some ways and doing something that you absolutely love. And he was like, if you don't have those things, most people will really struggle to find a purpose in life. You know what I mean? And he was like, so you can go down a dangerous road without those things in your life. And I was like, holy shit, dude. He just spoke to me like nobody else ever has. Because I don't have kids, not married, don't have the fulfilling job. The passion part in creating, obviously, like I was involved in theater, so that kind of like that gave me some happiness and a little bit of purpose. And now this, over the past year, has given me a little life, a little sense of like there's something in my gut where I'm like, okay, I'm happy to do this. But even with that, I'm speaking for myself personally. I don't want to speak for you, but like when we first started this, it was very spur of the moment. We did it. And throughout this past year, it's very much like we're trying to kind of still feel out our message, who we are, what we're trying to say. So it gets a little bit complicated. You know what I mean? Like Danny and I will text each other, do you have any topics that you want to talk about? And obviously there's a lot of like pop culture stuff that, you know, I pick up on. There's a lot of like Instagram stuff that I pick up on, but it also gets it's kind of like recycled. Like I follow a bunch of people on Instagram and they all kind of share the same topics. They all kind of almost say the same type of things. So like coming on to talk about it, it's almost like what makes us different. We're saying the same shit.
Especially when time passes. Like the
Yeah.
same
Yeah.
people talked about the same thing in 10 different ways over the course of 7 days, and then we want to talk about it, you know?
Right. Right. No, exactly. So that happens a lot. And like there's a hot topic that comes out. Boom. It's trending. There's celebrities talking about it. There's whatever influencers. And maybe we can't get together to make the podcast or whatever happen at that moment. And then you kind of like it's like time dies out and you're like, oh, all right. So like, do we even talk about it? Do we even touch on this topic
Yeah.
anymore? You know what I'm saying? So for me personally, over this whole pandemic and over this whole course of this past year, it's been extremely stressful. And then we've touched on this, before, but it's really kind of shifted my perspective on a lot of things, even from the time that we started this podcast till now. I feel like there's a lot of things inside of me that has changed and my outlook on things. And it's weird. It's like it's hard to express. And I'm kind of like I feel like I'm having like a midlife crisis. Like I'm like, should I go buy a Corvette or a Camaro or something? Like, I don't know.
Well, that's the weirdest thing too, is like we're having a midlife crisis in the middle of a crisis, like a real crisis.
Right,
You
right,
know what I mean?
right.
Like if we were 20, we'd be like, oh man, I can't go to the bars. You know what I mean? We're like having a midlife crisis and our life is in crisis.
Right, right. So it's kind of weird. So like when Jordan Peterson mentioned those things, I was like, dude, that is so crazy. Like, and he also talked about sex, and he talked about being a man, having sex, and I don't remember verbatim, but he also mentioned about abstinence from sex and making that sacrifice. Like he was like, it's if you're a guy that can get laid on the regular, let's just say. Now I'm dumbing it down for the sake of layman's terms. But like if you're a guy, if you're a good-looking guy that can get laid on the regular, it's much more difficult for you to abstain than a guy that isn't maybe the best looking guy. Maybe he doesn't have a good personality. Maybe he's not interacting with females to that degree. Do you know what I'm saying? So he was like, it's actually more virtuous if it's something that you can get and you give it up, as opposed to somebody who isn't, because it's not, you know what I'm saying? It's not the same degree of sacrifice.
Yeah. Like I know you hate New Year's resolutions, but it's like, I'm going to give up fucking kale for New Year's. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, it's great.
And if
Did you
you're
eat
like,
kale?
yeah, exactly. Like if you're a vegetarian, that might be difficult. But if you're a meat eater, like you're like, okay, no
No.
problem. You know what I mean? So there were certain things about that aspect too, because he basically was breaking down sex. And like, listen, like we started out this podcast, our first two episodes were about eating ass, getting laid,
Good
all that stuff.
topics.
And like, you know, it is a good topic. And it's like, look, dude, like we're guys, we talk about these types of things. But as you kind of hear him break down certain things about having like sexual relationships with people and just it building into bigger relationships in your life and actual like meaningful relationships in your life. It started to make a little bit more sense to me. Like, I don't know why I've been able to get girls pretty regularly. Like, I don't get it. Like, it's always been something that kind of like, I've always been the type of person like when somebody's like, "Oh, you're a good looking guy." I look at someone like I'm like, well, I'm not fucking Brad Pitt. I'm not Ben Affleck. You know what I mean? I'm not. I mean, dude, there's even guys that we grew up with in our neighborhood that I'm like, ah, he's a better looking guy than me. He's fucking jacked. He's got a fucking six pack. He's blah 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 blah. So I'm like, I don't get the level of girls that I've been able to get. Like, it just didn't even make sense to me. Sometimes it doesn't compute.
Yeah, but you see, because I understand what you're saying, because I've been there myself, and I think that that is, I mean, not to take the topic too differently, but that is part of the problem, and it's the problem that I had for a long time, and still probably have, but I don't care about it as much. It's like basically what you're saying is, in so many words, pretty much most of the time when you're with somebody, you're like, why are they fucking with me? Or like,
Right.
and maybe we won't take it into a relationship thing. We'll just keep it on the surface, like you're saying. It's like when you go into like, think about if you went into buying a house like that and somebody was like, okay, we're going to close the deal on the house. And you're like, I can't, why are they giving this to me? Like, you don't hold any power in that negotiation because you're sitting at the table going, well, I can't even believe that they're giving me this. When in reality, other people go in and buy a house and they're like, nah, I'm not fucking doing this till you fix the ceiling, fucking do something with the basement, or I'll walk out of here right now without signing this contract. And so that's the power struggle where I always fell on the weak side of that, but I don't think I'm anything special, but I don't care. Like, I know that like, I guess in my situation, I've been down the road so many times where I was like, oh my God. And I watch the, the aftermath of the breakup. And I always realized that you know, that what that person wanted that made me feel insecure is really, not what someone should be worried about. And it always will end badly for that person. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. But what so the comparison between that, I mean, maybe like so like when you go to buy a house, you're more than likely you're financially ready to buy the house. You know what I'm saying? Like you have everything prepared to buy that house. Everything kind of gets mapped out, planned out. You're like, okay, here's the mortgage payment. So you're like, okay, this can work. With relationships, it's obviously a little bit more complicated, and it's when I look back at a lot of the girls that I've dated or hooked up with, they're so many of the girls, gorgeous, beautiful people, like really, really girl, like, and I'm just like, I don't know how this even happened. Now that goes back to me kind of being in a little insecure because I wasn't necessarily ready to in the comparison to buy the house. Do you know what I'm saying? Like I
Yeah.
wasn't ready. Like I didn't have my shit together. Like now obviously when you're younger, it's not about being responsible. It's just like, oh, whatever. You're cute, you're attractive, you're hot, whatever. But like now as we get older, now it's like it becomes more complicated because like now people have kids, they're divorced, they're more stable, they're more in thing, their life is more grounded. And they want people that are more established. You know what I'm saying? So like I don't know. Like I just kind of like look at the whole aspect of like going back and I don't understand kind of like how some of the girls that I've hooked up with, I made that possible. Uh,
Well, then at least pat yourself on the back.
well, the only thing I could yeah, the only thing I could chalk it up to is like that we were just immature. So it was strictly based off of a physical attraction. You know what I mean? Which is I guess why like now it's much more complicated because it's more than that. You know what I mean? And because I functioned off of that aspect of it, like just like, oh, this is just a physical attraction. Now it's like I don't really know how to go to go to the next level. Although over the past, like I said, a year and a half, 2 years, I kind of understand a little bit more. Like I'm becoming more of an adult, I guess. I don't know. I don't really know. But it becomes much more complicated in dating now because listening to somebody like Jordan Peterson and what he has to say, it's kind of like it becomes difficult because like let's say for instance like the last girl the last podcast actually you mentioned you were like, oh Tom, you went on a date. We'll talk about that next time. Went out on a date with this girl, cool girl. I actually met her years ago. She kind of looked like what the fuck's that chick name from The Sopranos that Christopher dated? Dre De Matteo, whatever the fuck her name is.
I know who you're talking about. I don't know her name though. Yeah.
You know what I mean? John Dre De Matteo, whatever the fuck her name is. I don't know.
Yeah.
But like I met her on New Year's Eve at McFadden's at the ballpark one year, just going back fucking years ago. And we exchanged numbers, blah, blah, blah. Life happened, things. And then fast forward fucking 10 years later or whatever, how many years it's been. We match on a dating site. We go out. She was cool, but now she's out of a daughter and, an ex-husband or ex whatever. It just becomes a little bit more complicated. And on top of that, like, I don't, it's like really weird now because I'm not trying to throw this girl under the bus. All right. But I feel like if I was to hang out with her again, I probably could have slept with her right off the bat. And like, I'm not, maybe I'm wrong. I'm not trying to throw her under the bus, but just kind of some vibes that I picked up on, right? Like I'm sure there's plenty of girls that you've gone out with and you're like, yeah, I'm going to bang this chick. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
What you want.
that's not really what I'm looking for. And if I do it and we hang out, the next progression is like, all right, I'm going to bang you. And then what? Like, I'm not going to get any satisfaction out of this because it's like, boom, I hit it the second date. And now what? You know what I'm saying? Like it's
But
almost
dude, I used to look at my relationships and all the ones where I was like really smitten, right? To use that word. That's a hip word, right? All the hip hop guys are using that shit now.
I don't know about
Smitten.
that. Smitten. That's a cute word
But
though.
yeah, it is a good word. But whenever I was like really taken by a girl and I would be with her for a while and shit would go bad and I would look back and I would be like, man, like I put her on this pedestal. We didn't sleep together for the first week or 2 weeks or whatever it is. And then I think about what you just said. I look back and I realize I did not sleep with her because she was a special person. I didn't sleep with her because every time I saw the gesture where if I didn't care about her as much, I would just pounce on her. You know what I mean? Because it was like, oh, she's giving me the fuck me face.
Right.
And I started to realize that this wasn't a special person that like waited and was different than others. This was a person that I chose to make special, that I chose to like not treat the way I would treat others because I wanted something special with this person. And Personally, I don't think that I'm saying I'm not saying that these people were bad people or whatever, but this is what I'm saying. We create this shit in our mind. You're going into it like you're special, you're different. You know what I mean? What like it ain't like the girls never fucked on the first night. Like, what would be the difference of just fucking treating it as it is and not expecting any more or any less from anyone? Like, I think that's the whole thing with relationships is when you create these expectations, and I said this in one of our early episodes, you create these contracts, these verbal agreements with people that like either you created or whatever. And once you start to lay expectations on people, that's when you get disappointed. Like if you decided to think that this girl was so special, then a year later you hear her telling a story about some dirty, crazy shit she did with some dude in one night, and that makes you jealous or angry. It only makes you jealous or angry because you decided that she wasn't like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you created an expectation for her that was unrealistic, and then she let you down. So my new way of things is like I don't carry those expectations. You know what I mean? I just go in and look at it like every girl wants to bang a dude, you know? Like
Every
every dude wants to bang. If you think for a second that like they don't think like you or whatever else, but you also have to like give them the leeway too to understand. Like, see, I came up with this theory where I stopped caring so much about things that would happen. You know, like if your girl stays out all night or something, you know, and you get mad, something happens. Like she probably fucked somebody. You know what I mean? But it's like my dad said this to me when I was a kid, but it didn't resonate till I was older. Like he said he used to run fucking home in Brooklyn because he swore to God my mom was cheating on him. So if he got out of work early or something, he would like fucking take a cab instead of taking the bus and open up the door. And he's like, he even said something like he would pick up the phone and hit star 69 just to see who the fuck she was talking to on the phone. And like he looked at me and he said, you know, when I think back of the things I used to do like that, he's like, all I wanted to do was be with your mom. So she was there, but yet I was like trying to find something wrong in her or something.
yeah.
And he's like, even if I found it out, what did I want to do anyway? Like I wanted to be with her.
Right.
You know, so I guess what I'm trying to say is like you got to understand we're all like you got to come, dude. I was always a very jealous person. I had like when I look back at a lot of the people I dated and stuff, and like I hated them when we were done or something. I was a piece of shit too. So like knowing that I'm a piece of shit, it's not even that I'm saying I'm a piece of shit. What it is we're all fucking. It's in us innately to like be greedy and be whatever, and we have to suppress it. But I believe we set these expectations where we believe that that our girlfriend doesn't even want to look at anyone else because she's so infatuated with me. And if you believe that for a second, you're a fucking fool, you know?
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
and you and you look around at the people you see that are happy. Like look at the people that you really believe are really, really happy. They're the people where it's like the dude will make a joke when his girlfriend leaves for the night, like because he's home by himself. He loves being home by himself. He can't wait. And he's making a joke to her, like, you're just going down there to flirt with the bartender. I know you like him. And it's like jokes and oh, he's going to the strip club or whatever. You see these people that you would think if you're trying to stay in your box of what these expectations that you believe to be a great relationship, they always fail. But the ones that seem to be the happiest are like the two people saying shit that makes everyone else feel uncomfortable because they can't believe they're saying it. Yet, they got 3 kids and very happy and fucking living the family life and and really love each other,
Right. Right.
and the other people going around acting like, can you believe she said that, blah, blah, blah. And this all stems into the politics of today and everything. And it stems back to, because to bring it back to Jordan Peterson, one thing that really resonated with me is something I've tried to say, but he said it in such better words. He was like, he was asked some question by somebody about like, don't you think that it's a global issue? Like, in other words, they were talking about how people need to take care of things in a community. Like, in other words, his answer to some other question was like, you need to take care of your home. That's the most important. Kind of like you were saying, like, in other words, you take care of your wife, you take care of your kids. And the question was like global warming or something. They're like, don't you think that like something like global warming, for instance, can't be taken care of like that? It needs to be taken care of by, multiple people, like on a global scale.
Right.
And he was like, no. He's like, you start in your home. If everybody and I've said this to you before about these people that are screaming and yelling. Like I said it to my girlfriend at the time about race. Like I'm looking at all these crazy people screaming about racism and then I'm like, if all these people just didn't do racist shit in their lives, we would have way less of a problem.
Right.
And what he started to say is like, no, because basically, if you think about it, if all these people care so much about global warming and then they lived in a way where they taught their family, they taught their kids, like, yo, don't waste shit, don't fucking drive expensive gasoline guzzling cars, whatever, then like on a global scale, that would help. And they just kept fighting, like, well, it doesn't work like that. And his response was, no, yes, it does. And the whole problem with society right now is that you can't go ahead and try and fix a community's problem if you can't fix your own problem. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
And like there was some stuff he was saying where I'm like, wow, like I would have probably answered those questions by just responding like with a little bit of being offended and a little bit of just saying shit like how does that make sense or blah blah blah. Whereas he just like fucking hits home with everything he was saying. But when it comes to like our relationships and whatever else, I mean, that is the truth. Like if you really think about it, like if everybody really cares about these issues together, well, if they just took care of those issues in their home, and I am starting to believe that sadly I don't really have a family or whatever, but like the real answer like as I started to see all the way I was feeling about things I can't control. And I think I listened to like Tucker Carlson on a podcast with Charlie Kirk way back. I sent it to you. And then there were other things I started to see. And really, things got to a point where I'm like, I'm worried about shit that at this point I can't control it. I have no control over what's going on.
Right.
And we kind of said it on the podcast where I said to you one time, like, there's so much shit going on that I can't even focus on it, you know?
Yeah.
And then I just realized like the only thing I can do is just like focus on me. The only thing I can do is just at this point is just make sure that I'm living in a way that I'm okay with. I'm not changing the beliefs that I have and the person that I am and just live my life, you know, and live my life the way I have and treat people a certain like just that's it. You can't expect to change the world, but if everyone kind of did that, we'd be in a good place.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And, that's that. So one of the things that he kind of like with his first book, he mentions, one of the first things you do in the morning is get up and make your bed. And it seems like so ridiculous. Like, what does that have to do with making my life better? But that's establishing order. Like, I don't get up in the morning and make my bed. I never do. You know what I'm saying? But like my boss does, and he's my boss probably
Probably
because
because
because he does that. You
yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like he's actually mentioned to me, like, yeah, I get up and I make my bed. And Jordan Peterson has mentioned like that's in his book. And from there, it basically goes from, once you get yourself in order, And then if you have a family, you give what you can to your family and get that in order. And once you have that in order, then you go locally and you try to get your community in order. And whatever you have left from that, then you step outside of your community and try to make that better. And that was one thing that, like, I think a lot of times people, with the media, social media, mainstream media, everything gets so polarized, and it's, for you and I, let's just say, when we look at these stories on the news and all, and we're like, dude, our country's fucked up, which, maybe it is in a way, but like there isn't really anything that Tommy Carolee and Danny Bender can do about that. The only thing that we can do is make ourselves better and the relationships with the people that are around us better. And that is the first step. You know what I'm saying? And like if we have more energy once we have that in order, then of course go outside of that norm. You know what I mean? Um, so this is just one thing that I kind of have taken away from him, that it's what's crazy is that anybody that listens to him, and this is something that I was actually listening to a podcast with him earlier. Um, and there was a guy, Russell Peters, I believe his name is.
Comedian.
Yeah, he's a comedian. And he was like, it's crazy that so many people have this polarizing view of who Jordan Peterson is, right? It's really strange. A lot of leftists, progressives, like they are completely out on Jordan Peterson. I mean, he's been demonized as racist, sexist, homophobe, anything that the left can throw at him, he's been called those names. And I think part of the reason is, and this is something that I've been thinking about recently, and this guy Russell Peters just mentioned, but like you and I, let's just say, I'm a trash man. You're a bartender. I have an associate's degree. I don't know about. I'm not sure exactly.
Associates and a little bit more.
Yeah, but like we don't have the certifications for people to take us seriously. Like the people on the left, let's just say, for instance, like most of the time, and even Joe Rogan has mentioned this. Like he's like, when I think about the leftists in this country, they're educated, they're smarter people. So you kind of have this stereotype, I guess, against people like you and I. Obviously, we're the deplorables. You know what I'm saying? So like when you think about leftists, they're obviously college educated, they're more intelligent. But the problem is that, you know, you and I, for instance, like we don't have the diplomas, we don't have the bachelor degrees, the master's degrees to kind of back up anything that we kind of think of. Jordan Peterson does. So everything that he says that you and I are already thinking of, or we're not articulating to our audience in the same fashion that he is. You know what I'm saying? But he does have the degrees. He does have every certification that you could possibly imagine. So he is a threat to the people on the left because they can demonize you and I. They could say, oh, well, they don't have a bachelor's degree. They're fucking stupid. They're deplorables. But they can't do that to him because he has not only does he have the same certifications, maybe he has more in some aspects. You know what I mean? So it becomes difficult. So they have to criticize him because they're not really worried about you and I, because they just write us off as just idiots. You know what I mean? The neighborhood idiot.
Well, it's also funny. Like exactly what you're saying. I experienced once, and again, it's something I may have mentioned on here, but when I was going to school, before I was going to school, see what I hate about my position and definitely your position is I don't really think less of what I do. I do think that, as I've talked about on here before, there's a lot that goes on. A lot of it's intelligent. You got to really be aware of a lot of things. And, but the bottom line is at the end of the day, you're a bartender and you're not 21. There's something wrong with you in people's minds.
Right.
And when I wasn't going to school, these people that considered themselves intellectuals would have all these conversations about history and whatever. And I like really do know a lot about certain things, especially Ben Franklin. I don't read books, but I've read like 5 books on him.
Right.
And I would engage in these conversations and they would just like laugh me out of it because, what do I know? And when I got my associates and then was like going to Temple or whatever, like I started to engage in the same kind of conversations with the same people. And one time they kind of wrote me off and I said, so the thing was I started to understand, like, what did you go to school for? Computer science? Well, we're talking about fucking history. How much history did you take? Oh, I took American history and then I took ancient history. Okay, so you took fucking 2 classes. I took fucking 2 classes in history.
Right.
You know what I mean? So I started to realize or notice as I was being educated, my conversations were the same, but the result of my addition to the conversation seemed to carry more weight all of a sudden, although my conversation would have been the same 5 years ago. Even when I was going to school, I had some trouble with a class because there was a lot of fucking reading involved. And I used to really make sure that like even the shit I was reading, I'm like, I know the answer to this question because we would be asked the question first, then have to read all night. And I was struggling because I wanted to do the right thing. Like when you go back to school later in life, you actually like really want to be there. You really want to learn. Like if you feel like you're cheating in some way, you feel like you're stealing from yourself. And I started taking this class and it was like a lot of reading. And I talked to my dad and I'm like, dude, I'm like struggling because I really want to fucking do a good job. But like, I know the answers to these questions and it's not really a topic that I want to pursue. So I wouldn't be too upset about neglecting it a little bit. But my dad's answer to me was, do you know the fucking answers to the questions? I said, yeah. He was like, well, it's all about that stamp, dude. It's all about that certification. So just fucking answer the fucking question. And dude, I stopped reading the fucking book and I just answered the fucking questions every fucking week. And I went from struggling in the class to just acing through it. It was an
Right.
online course. That was the problem. So they just bombarded you with shit. And I was like really trying to do it right. But that resonated with me of like, it's all about the stamp. So here I'm struggling to worry about what I'm actually consuming intellectually. And you know how many people are like, that's why I even say, like, dude, I'm dead serious. Like that class in particular, I can guarantee you that class and what I've noticed in college is the higher up you go in school, like the better level of education you're supposedly getting, the less involved people are with you. And when I went to Temple versus going to community college, they were like really out to prove that they were a good teacher and shit.
Right.
Then you go to Temple University and you take like a basic level course. And the whole course is like, let's just have a discussion. And you don't even know what's going on. You don't even take a test and you get an A. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so like the more intellectual you supposedly are, the more freedom you are. And to be honest with you, dude, that's why I don't even buy into the whole college thing because it's all about you getting fucking stamped and then you get a job because you got a stamp. And I don't think that stamp proves to anybody that you're educated. I think that stamp carries other weight with it. Like that stamp says that you are a good human. You're like, in other words, say you go to Harvard. It's like you come from a good family. You probably come from a family of some type of fucking wealth or importance. you're smart because you got in there with the fucking SATs or something. So like you have abilities too. Don't get me wrong. I can't go to Harvard, but I don't think like, I think that Harvard just means like you're one of us. Like that's what that stamp means. Like, oh, you're one of us, you know?
Right.
You're like if you went to some big liberal college that cost a lot of money, it's like who's to say that that person didn't get the same education. I would love, like, if you think about how education is, like, why wouldn't they just, like, they want to talk about free college, why don't they just record, like, we went through the pandemic and this is what a lot of people were afraid of. Harvard was still charging like full Harvard admission to do a year's worth of like online courses. If that's the case, why don't they just fucking record that and let everyone fucking take a Harvard fucking course and be educated? You know what I mean?
Right.
So why protect education so much? Like it's a value. You know what I mean? Like it's just funny to me that like it seems to me like I think at the bottom line of it is what's the difference between history 101 at Harvard and history 101 at Penn State and history 101 at community college? I'll tell you the difference. Probably about $15,000 to $20,000. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
But are
Uh,
we going down a weird path here? Am I boring everybody?
no, not at all. Um, yeah, I mean, dude, it's a weird thing, with the dynamic of the way people view you based off of your education level. And it's, to some degree, I get it, you know, but at the same time, I was just listening to Neil deGrasse Tyson on Joe Rogan. He's an extremely brilliant guy, but when you listen to him speak, it's like us talking, right? I mean, he's not using gigantic words and vocabulary that I've never heard of, and he's an astrophysicist, you know. But then you have other people like let's just say, like, and I'm not gonna try to compare the two, but like somebody like uh Ti, the rapper. You listen to his podcast or you listen to him talk, and he uses these big words, and I'm like, all right, I don't know that word. I don't even know what you're talking about, but you sound stupid to me. You know what I mean? Just because you're using bigger words,
Yeah.
you still seem dumb. Like, and it almost brings me back to, and we talked about this on the pod. Well, I've talked about it, the movie Higher Learning, where the guy Omar Epps in the film, he's a freshman, and he's like throwing all these big words into a paper he's writing. And Tyra Banks was like, "Do you even know what these words mean?" And he was like, "Well, I just looked it up." You know what I mean? And she was like, "You sound stupid. Like this, it doesn't make like, yeah, like it's in context, I guess, but like you're using big words and you're really not sure what they are. And it's just ridiculous."
Well,
You
but
know what I
well,
mean?
as dumb as this might sound, because I forget the context around it, but I kicked the guy out of my bar for something like that, where two guys got in a dispute and the guy was trying to make it like racial, and I was actually like neutral in the situation, and when I engaged with it, like I was trying to be helpful, and this dude just kept like spitting big words, but he was just making simple statements and just kept like using these big words. And like, as dumb as this might sound to somebody, it was like I immediately copped on to like, you're an idiot. And you're just like
Right.
throwing big words into things that I doubt you even know. And basically, I ended up telling the dude, like, I'm fucking done with talking to you because I'm trying to fucking help you. And you're trying to just out fucking vocabulary me because you have no
Right.
clue what the fuck's going on. So I'm done with you. You know what I mean?
Right.
But like, and that's the other thing too, is like, I really think, see, the thing that got me with Jordan Peterson, going back to what you were saying about how everybody villainized him, which is kind of how we weirdly got here. What I started to realize, and it stemmed from like it actually thinking about it as you're talking about it, it's kind of where I ended up being a Trump supporter. I realized looking back that I fell into that Jordan Peterson is like a bad guy thing, you know?
Mhm.
Like I didn't know anything about Jordan Peterson at all. But I would just like when I wasn't so involved in shit, it was like 2015. I started seeing like a headline that said like Jordan Peterson not allowed to speak on campus, da, da, da. And I assumed that he must have like because I didn't understand the world we lived in because I wasn't that engaged in what where we were going. And I was like, this dude must have came out and said like he hates trannies or something, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
And I just like kept and this is what I think that the machine understands is they just kept villainizing him. And then one day I was watching a Jordan and a Rogan podcast, and Rogan was having a conversation about Jordan Peterson, saying like it's it's funny that people try to villainize him. I understand why he's maybe controversial, but he literally believes in what he preaches, and he actually just wants to help. Like because the dude was saying you don't think he likes the fame of it, and he's like maybe he does, but I think that what he likes is the fame of it because he's really trying to help people. So then I started watching a couple of. I was like, okay, but a lot of his debates and shit are pretty in your face stuff. So it was good stuff, and I liked what he was saying, but I didn't see like a softer side of him or anything. I just saw like he's Jordan Peterson, and he's in his beliefs, and I don't
Yeah.
know everything that he believes. But this thing I was watching earlier, um, they were like taking video. It was a really big thing in Australia. Like it wasn't some shitty little podcast. And they were taking like video questions from just people that they had recorded earlier. And some dude like fucking I want to say the guy's name. It doesn't because I don't want to like get into I don't know much about him, but it was Milo fucking you whatever that dude's name is. The like gay dude that's not gay anymore and shit.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So somehow there was one video where the dude was somewhat famous, and he basically told Jordan Peterson in the video like, you didn't stick up for me when this happened. You say all this shit about whatever, but yet you were nowhere to be found during this incident. And I feel like, how do you feel about grifting all the time and letting down people that are your base or blah blah blah? And I'm thinking, oh fuck, Jordan Peterson. Like, I was waiting for the normal tit for tat. And fucking Jordan Peterson was like, I talked to Milo a couple times, and the only thing I can say to what you said is I don't agree with everything you said. He's like, but he's like, I also do understand what you mean because I have stayed out of some things that I knew would carry too much backlash. And I also don't feel that I'm someone that needs to comment on every situation. But then he was like, on that specific situation you're talking about, I do feel like I may have let you down and maybe I didn't stick up for you enough. And for that, I apologize. And I do. And I'm thinking, this isn't an asshole. You know what I mean? Like
Oh
he's
yeah.
apologizing. Like who the fuck ever does that? Like normally they just answer like, well, whatever. And here he is saying, if you are right. And I should have probably stuck up for you more. And I didn't. And I did it. I didn't do it because I was weak because I knew the pressure. I didn't feel like it was a fight for me. But now that I see how you feel about it, I do apologize to you that I probably should have stuck up for you more. And I'm like, this guy is not representing anything that I've been told about this guy, you
Right.
know?
Right, right.
And so that's where I think the danger is it's why is it only, like then someone will combat me about what a piece of shit he is. And it's like, dude, I went into it thinking he was a piece of shit, you know?
Right.
But the difference between me and someone else, I think, is that call someone a piece of shit too many times, and eventually I'll say to myself, you can't do that because you don't really know anything about the guy. So at least let's watch a video. You know
Right.
what I mean?
Right.
At least let's read an article. And every time I've done that, I start to get led in a different direction. But let's take this back to a different place. I thought about something with. Oh, by the way, you know what I love about today's episode? I should have said in the beginning. I chose not to wear any pants today.
I just noticed that. I just
so,
noticed.
so, no, but you know what I thought about with you, and I literally thought about this today. I haven't talked much about my relationship,
Right.
right?
Right.
And it's more out of respect for, uh, my significant other, whatever you want to call her.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But it's because I don't know if she listens, and I'm not, like I'm the kind of person where like I will share anything, but I'm not like I don't talk about people in a way where it may hurt them, or you know what I mean. Like there's a lot of people that go like, oh, like you would think I have a big mouth because I'll tell a story about myself and someone that's never going to know this story.
Right.
I won't tell a story about
Right.
someone. But what I will say is, I'm not even sure if I'm single. I don't know, but I really don't care. I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean that in the way of I've been down this road so many times. It doesn't really affect, it doesn't bother me. That's not to say that, like I don't wish things were a different way, but I'm not, and I think what went wrong in this was during quarantine, I was kind of forced to go against what I thought was my new way, and that's when the trouble started, which is I started to create these contracts, like before quarantine, it was, hey, come over whenever you want. Oh, here's a key. Cause I ain't a pig. So like come and go as you please. Oh, you stayed here for a week. That doesn't mean that you live here, but it also doesn't mean you can't stay here every day. You know what I mean?
Right.
And, during quarantine, it started to become like, like, oh, like I'm not your girlfriend. I've been here for 6 months, and it's like, well, I mean, I didn't want to get to this point. You know what I mean? And how do you say to somebody when you don't believe in these contracts, like, you're not my girlfriend, but which is not what it's not that I don't think someone is or isn't my girlfriend, but it's just kind of like, what do you think you are? You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right.
Do you think that I have to say you're my girlfriend for me to be trusted? That you see where that's where the problem comes in. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then all of a sudden you say, okay, like just to appease them, you call them your girlfriend. Then all of a sudden the next day, I won't even go into like the real details of things, but it even becomes something like, oh, you're doing your podcast on your only night off? Well, yeah, I'm doing my podcast. And then all of a sudden it becomes you have one night to spend with your girlfriend. You can't, you know what I mean? Like the girlfriend word becomes like them saying like, you signed the fucking dotted line, big,
Right.
And my way of looking at things is like, let's just like, are you not happy with what's going on? Why do people become so fixated on titles and words and contracts? But anyway, what I started to realize though is, see, I know the pain you're going through, and I don't have that pain because of it's maybe a positive side of the life I chose, but it's also a negative side. Like, I look at all the friends that you've stayed in contact with, the Paul Mackeys, the Naps, even someone like Flea, you know what I mean?
Right.
And I think, man, I think for a second, like these guys were really good friends of mine. And then I realize, time has passed. Like I still think of them like that because I've always cherished them for years, The reason why I'm saying this is like tonight you were at a kid's birthday party, right?
Right. Right.
Now, on one level, to me, that's awesome. But I also know that it's only awesome if you also like if you have a kid, it's like Friday night, we're gonna go to the party. It's the kids' party. I'm gonna take my kid, and then dads are gonna sit in the other room and be dads. So when you're still engaging with people in such a tight knit, whereas I've just chose to be a vagabond, like the amount of people that I've known who've gotten married, had kids, and then stopped coming to the bar, they're still good friends of mine, but like that they left my life. You know what I mean?
Right.
But if I chose to stay in a tight knit group of guys and shit, the things that I get sick of, like when I go to a kid's party, that's when all that shit sets in. Like I'm a piece of shit. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
I gotta be here. Like the difference too that people don't understand is like even in my family, they're like, oh, why didn't you come to whatever's birthday party? Like, motherfucker, there's 30 kids. They all have different birthdays. I can't take off for every birthday and just go stand there and be fucking weird Uncle Danny in the background.
Right.
But if you're part of that world, you chose the life, you have a kid, whatever, like that's actually something to do. Like, hey, we're gonna go to this party. Now, the only reason why I say that is I hate weddings, I hate parties and shit like that. And I have the option to just be like, I'm not going. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And usually when somebody I know gets married, it's like saying goodbye to them and shit to a certain extent, you know?
Yeah.
But if I had to like still engage with these people and be their friend, and like every time I would, like when I go to a wedding, dude, I want to fucking shoot myself in the face. They put me at the fucking weird table, you know?
Right.
The whole time you're like thinking, the whole time I'm just thinking, could I even do this? Like the whole time I'm thinking, like, what a horrible thing. What, not that someone's getting married, but like the whole show of it, I wouldn't even want part of it, you know? And, you know, not to bring up my fucking dad so many times, but he was a really fucking intelligent guy. And I remember one time actually not being like feeling like I was an outsider because I wasn't invited to weddings and shit. And I remember like kind of being upset about it for some reason. I said it to my dad, and he was like, Dan, the reason why people won't invite you to their weddings is because you'll just sit around the fucking punch bowl and fucking like observe and analyze everyone because you're not that dude. And I don't think that what he said was like fucking true in a sense. But what I mean is that's what I do. You know, you sit me like instead of just sitting there and being like, yay, like I sit there and go like, oh my God, that must be so embarrassing to sit up there right now while this guy's giving a speech about you. And then I'm looking at the guy giving the speech going, oh, God bless him. He has to give this fucking speech or, you know, whatever. And I'm not having any fun. You know, and the older you get, the less and less single people are there. Like maybe when we were 20 and your first friend gets married, you're like, I'm going to a fuck fest.
Right. Right.
But now you're like, hey, it seems like you and my aunt were really hitting it off. You know?
Yeah. 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 Well,
You get what I'm saying? Like, I feel like if I had to go, if my nights out were going and being with my best fucking buds, dude, who are like, there's nothing wrong with them choosing family lives. I think it's a wonderful thing that they all chose. But if my life was to keep engaging with those kind of situations, I think I would be pretty fucking depressed.
yeah. I mean, I don't really know. I don't really know what to say to that other than, I mean, I think you and I are very similar in a lot of ways in that, you know, like you said, you're like a vagabond. So like you've always kind of been like, as long as I've known you, you know, since we were kids, you've kind of always marched your own beat. You know what I'm saying? Like you had a couple good friends and you would hang out with them for a while and then something would happen, whatever, like high
It wouldn't
school.
even be bad. It would just
No,
be like,
no,
I'm doing this now.
yeah. And then you wouldn't see that person for 6, 7 months, a year, whatever. And there was exactly like you said, there wasn't anything bad that happened. It's just life happens.
Yeah. Well, I'm
You know what I'm
also
saying?
selfish, but it's not. See, the thing that I always hate is if people really understood me, they would understand that it's not like, in other words, from someone who sees life differently, they'd be like, oh, here's this guy again. Like fucking, he disappeared. But dude, like I always considered certain people like so close to me where it
Right.
was like, yeah, like in other words, like it was just like, I'm gone. Yeah, dude, when I went to Florida, I just left. And like my mom didn't even fucking notice. And the thing I'm getting at is even look at my family. Like they were like, you didn't tell anybody? And like my attitude was like, why? Why was I supposed to tell somebody? You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
And
Well,
like that's selfish, I guess.
it
But
is.
if you understand that like I don't it ain't like I'm looking at people like, yo, you didn't fucking tell me. You know what I mean? Like
Right.
other people do shit. And so, but the thing is I'm so different that I'm starting to realize, like, as I got like, dude, I had a friend that said to me one time, he's like, dude, you didn't fucking text me back. And I'll never forget. It was like, it almost broke my heart. I'm looking at him like, yeah, but we're boys. Like most of my fucking vagabond friends, like if they don't text me back, I'm like, they don't want to hang out, and that's it.
Right. Right.
And so I like didn't text somebody back when then I saw him the next day and we were hanging out and he was so mad. He was also 6'5" and fucking 275 pounds, like a bodybuilder. And
Yeah.
he's like, yo, like you didn't fucking hit me back. And I'm like, nah, well, I just fucking, he's like, what were you doing? I'm like, nothing. And then he looked at me, he went, I'm gonna tell you something right now. If you want to be friends with me, when I text you, you text me back. Other than that, we ain't friends. And I was like, okay. And I started to, as I like in now that I'm older, I've started to like, I actually have to tell myself it like I respond more. You know what I mean?
Right.
I try to, be not be honest because I don't think I ever lied, but like if I was doing something like, oh man, I'm banging this girl. If somebody texts me, I would be like, I'm just gonna leave it be,
Right. Right.
and now I'll be like, I'll just text the person and be like, I can't talk right now. I'll tell you tomorrow, whereas I would never do that before.
Yeah, and I mean, dude, like we went through periods where we didn't talk for years. You know what I'm saying? And even I've gone through that with certain friends in my circle now where I didn't talk to for years, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just kind of something that happens, but like, you know, like for me, it's kind of like I'm an only child. You know what I mean? So like I don't have anybody to answer to really. And I don't really like I have obviously like my core group of friends, but even then, I may go weeks, months without speaking to them really, you know? And again, as we progress through life, people have kids, people get married. It's kind of natural. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? But, like, for me, I don't know, like, it's just I've just kind of always been that way, so, like, it never was really, like, a big deal to me. Some people may be like, well some people may find it offensive or be upset that I don't reach out, but I'm just like, "Well, dude, like, you got this going on. You got your relationships, you got your marriage, kids, whatever." So, it's kinda like we just don't have the same interests or anything to kind of relate to. And it's not that I'm mad at you. It's not that I'm not interested in what's going on in your life. It's just like life goes on. It happens. What are you gonna do? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, that's a weird thought too. It's like when you're 20 and you stop talking to somebody, it's because there's a reason. Like if you actually stop talking to somebody, like people would be like, why are you hanging out with this person? When you're like 40, you lose people. Like you almost understand it. Like, oh yeah, well, that's the last time I'll see that dude. Yeah, you know what I mean? Like not for something you did bad,
Right.
but it's like, I'll never forget when a bunch of guys that came down here for like a bachelor party and shit. And it's like I was probably like 30 something and I hadn't seen them in years. And I was like, like, yo, you guys ready to fucking hang out? And they're like, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, you guys want to do some shots? And everyone like I just poured them out.
Yeah.
And they're like, oh no, 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 no. And like dudes I used to drink with and just get nasty drunk with were like, maybe we can have one, but no more. And I'm looking and I'm realizing like, wow, their life has went a different path than mine.
Right.
Like
Right.
they're adults.
Yeah.
I'm not an adult, you know?
Yeah. Yeah,
But
dude.
I think where I'm at now is I just realized at some point that I'm a different person. That it's not that anyone chose a different way. Like I guess I also stopped being see what I think happened to me in the past couple of years was I also eliminated the judgmental part. Like, dude, why is he fucking like, I know, like, dude, they got kids. Like, like, you know what I mean? Like, or like fucking, I stopped like looking at people like in other words, if a dude started dating a girl, so he stopped coming around. And then he come, you know how people know when you're younger, you're like, oh, now he fucking wants to hang out. You know what I mean? As I've gotten older, I realized like he's lost in the fucking sauce with his pussy. You know what I mean? I'm
Yeah,
not gonna
yeah.
hold it against him.
Right.
And if he comes back around, and then you started to realize too that like, and that's what I think is funny about when people would say like if you know the history, you can tell the future. Well, especially I think as a bartender, like you start to be able to predict everything. Like you see a guy he's smitten with a girl, and you can literally say to yourself like, in 6 months he'll be in here complaining about her. You know what I mean?
Right.
And then you also can see like the people where it's like he's complaining about her, but in 6 months I bet he's going to marry her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So and you do, and the thing is it becomes funny, and you throw like you have to. What I have to remember is like even the things that are really true to me. Like if I say like if somebody doesn't text me back, they're an asshole. I have to understand that like who am I to create a system to judge everyone under? You know what I mean?
Right.
Everyone has their own system, and just because like they do the one thing that you can choose to not like them, but you shouldn't judge them, just because they chose to a path or a thing that you wouldn't have, because who the fuck am I? Like, I think that's what I started to realize more is even though I always thought that I was like an open-minded, fair and non-judgmental person, I realized that even the smallest of things that I thought of almost it being okay to judge someone under, I realized they don't they don't they don't lie in every situation. Like you can't put your fucking thing on other people. Period.
Right. Right.
You know? But
Yeah, man.
I mean, like, dude, what do you want to do? You want to fall in love again, or what do you want?
Uh yes. Yes, I would absolutely. You know, eh, going back to the initial thing that, like we were talking about with Jordan Peterson and the things that if you have in your life and you don't, like you're going to struggle. Um yeah, like I would love to. And I life is just a really weird thing. I know that sounds cliche. I know it's like okay, what are you saying that's like new or anything? And that's what I mean, like going through this past year with this podcast and listening to certain people and trying to figure things out. It's like even our podcast, right? We're our whole premise is like we're a bunch of guys, like we don't know what's really going on in the world. We just have a bunch of questions. It's like, okay, we have a bunch of questions. I question everything. You know what I mean? I'm constantly questioning myself about everything, my religious beliefs, my political beliefs, everything when it comes to relationships and careers and all these things. It's constantly coming up in me. And I started to think about our podcast, and I'm like, all right, so like if all we have are questions, what exactly are we coming up with that is new or informative for people to pay attention to us for?
Well, I can
Because
answer that question.
well, only because like if all we have are questions and we're not offering solutions, then what's the point, right?
Well, you're right, and I've had the same thought. My biggest problem with our podcast, which I don't have a problem, but is not that we don't have answers, that we don't have whatever, but we got to find some type of, we can't go all over the place all the time. But we also are struggling with like not constricting it, right? But to go back to the questions part, let me ask you a question. When you're really confused in life, right? And you don't have an answer, okay, for your situation, But you see, like if you're at a wedding, like we were talking about, and you're like, man, and you're looking around and everybody looks so happy, everybody, whatever, you feel alone. If one guy at that table with you get a second, maybe you're at the bar, you do a shot with some dude or something. And if he looks at you for 1 second and goes like, dude, I, I can't even see myself getting married or something.
Right.
He doesn't have the answer for you, but you can take a big breath because you don't feel alone anymore. You know what I mean? And I think we live in a world where we're looking around and everybody's got the answer. Everybody's got the answer. He's this. Don't listen to this guy. Don't do that, you know? And we don't have a problem with being wrong, and we don't have a problem with not knowing if we're right. But I feel that I can take a big breath when I realize that I'm not alone in my questions. You know what I mean? And you're never going to get to the answers to these questions if people that are living, like, in other words, when you're taking advice from your friend who's married and he's telling you, he's sitting there with his wife and they're telling you what you got to do, dude, you don't know what they do when they go home. You don't know what he fucking jerks off to. You know what I mean?
Right. Right.
You don't know what he's thinking. And so everyone around you is always telling you how to live your life. And that makes you go home and question, like, is there something wrong with me? And what I don't mind, not like just going, like, in other words, I think that when people see somebody open themselves up, it's almost like that person lets off a facade and that the other person, like, you know, if you're hanging out with a dude who's fucking 6'5", and the whole time you're thinking, man, I'm fucking scared where we are, but like he's 6'5", he probably, like, I don't even know how to act because he's fucking being Mr. Tough Guy, and I feel like a pussy, and I'm kind of afraid to say that I don't feel comfortable right now, you know? And
Right.
like, let's just say that guy turns around to you and he's like, dude, I'm last thing I want to do is get in a fight in here. And you feel like that person let down a facade. You don't know whether he could fucking beat up everybody in here or can't, whatever, but you at least know he shares the feeling that you're afraid to admit to. You know what I mean? That
Hmm.
doesn't mean that you can solve any problems coming your way. But I just personally feel in my life, and especially in the past couple of years, you know, it's like you go outside and everybody's like, you're getting the vax, right? You're doing this, right? Blah, blah, blah. And you don't know, you start to feel like, I'm afraid, I don't want to look like am I fucking crazy? And then someone says this, like, hey man, I'm fucking scared to do it. And you're like, all right, I'm not alone. You know what I mean? And I think
Yeah.
that's how I feel about this, is like the idea, the overall idea is like, you know, just knowing that whatever problems you're having, everyone, there's other people in the world going through them and you're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and the other thing that also sometimes I wonder about, you know, when I talked about earlier about how, people that have, bachelor degrees, master degrees, and the educated, so-called educated people, you have conversations with people like that, and they're like, oh, well, yes, this is how you solve racism, and this is how you solve the economy, and this is how you solve poverty. And I'm like, what makes you think that you're so smart that you have these answers? Right? Like, this is something that humanity has dealt with for hundreds of years. We have the smartest people in the world that are supposed to be doing these. I don't even want to say the smartest people in the world. They're more the more charismatic people in the world when it comes to politicians. But I'm like, okay, so like I have a bunch of questions, but I also think it's weird that you like think that someone like you has the solutions. I'm not saying that you're necessarily wrong, but I find it interesting that you think that highly of yourself that you think you have it all figured out. You know what I'm saying? And it's weird, man. Like, I like, again, going back to this whole pandemic and everything. there's just been so much in me that has changed throughout this whole ordeal, where like I question so much about our leadership, our politicians, whether they be Republican or Democrat, and just in general, people. And again, all I have is questions. I don't have answers. So I start to think to myself like, well, why do I even have the right to be on a platform like this, and to just kind of spit shit out in the world? Like, who the fuck am I? Like, what the fuck am I offering? You know what I'm saying? Like, there's people like I don't know, Kanye West, let's just say, for instance, like they're actually creating things. You know what I mean? Like, there's people in the world that are creating, and there's people like me that are only asking questions. And it's like, well, what the fuck is that? What is that?
Well,
Like, it
isn't it?
doesn't like what's the if all I have is questions, and of course, like the age old saying of there's no stupid question, right? But like, if all we do is come on and ask questions, what is the point of that?
Well, as much as like, there's certain things that we might ask questions about that I don't believe anybody has the answer to. You know what I mean?
Right.
But then there's other things where we do have answers. They're just maybe not the ones that are for that person. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, in other words, I can sit here all day long and tell you how I feel about how you should handle a relationship. But like, in that case, I'll have answers. But they're to the person I'm talking to, it's options. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I think the one thing that those other people like the Kanye West and all, like, the thing I started to realize as I got older is I really believe the difference between someone like yourself and Kanye West is that he had a high level of confidence and he went after something. And I was just literally listening to a podcast where people were talking about how Kanye used to be like a little producer. And when he started doing beats for like other people, he would constantly try and like rap in front of them and show them his tapes and shit.
Yeah.
And for like 3 years, people were like, "Oh, here comes that motherfucker again."
Right.
Like famous people being like, "Dude, get this guy out of the fucking studio,"
Right.
you know?
Right.
But he would just so he'd be in there making like a little beat. And then when he was in the booth for a second, for no reason at all, he would just rap, you know?
Mm.
And like the person there is like, why is this guy rapping? He made a beat. Like, that's what you're here for. And
Right.
they talked about how he was so annoying and he was this. And I mean, the thing that I think that we have some catching up to do is that, like, unfortunately, we don't have the time that we would have had if we were 15 and felt the way we do. But what I'm realizing now is how important it is to just stay a course. Like, you don't have to, you don't have to pick a course and stay a course. So that's not, I don't mean like, you become a mailman and you fucking whatever. That's not what I mean. What I mean is, don't fight like, don't fight what your fucking mind wants. If you want to be a fucking act, like, I think we get so ahead of ourselves with these insecurities and shit. And you think to yourself, like, I don't know what it is. Like, this is definitely a not a good thought, but I think we all have it. I believe that people give more of a fuck about me than they do. And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean it in a way where it's actually hurt me. Like, everything I did, I was very concerned with like, if I went into a store, I would be kind of thinking like, oh man, I'm holding up this fucking line and these people all hate me and whatever.
Right.
And I kind of think like that carries over. Like, now they're just hating on me, like they're thinking about me all day. And then you got to tell yourself, like, when you're in that line, unless it's like really dramatic, Like, you don't even care. Like, how many times have you been in a store where the guy in front of you is in his underwear? You know what I mean?
Right.
That thought is like, if you go into fucking Walmart, some dude's walking around in his fucking pajama bottoms, a wife beater, and slippers. You fucking think about it for a moment, you laugh, and it's over. But yet I feel like I'm always concerned about whatever. So in other words, it's like if you go in for an audition, like some people just don't carry the thought of like being like, why would you be embarrassed in front of people you're going to see for 3 seconds and they're either going to like you or they're not, you
Right.
know?
Right. Right.
But that always carried so much weight with me, in this documentary with Philip Seymour Hoffman.
Great
He,
actor.
yeah. And he was explaining like going to some audition when he was like younger as to be a pirate or something. And he said, and he was actually like talking. It was a little clip from him at like the actor studio. And he was like, dude, people go into auditions and they think like, but I don't want to like embarrass myself. I don't want to whatever. He's like, dude, you go into that audition and you be the best fucking pirate that you can be. And his words were, if you go in and you give it your all, and what I took from that is like, don't go in there and be like, but I want to fucking like, I don't want to like be too loud because, I still want to like be, you want to be thought of in some other kind of way. And what he said was, I guarantee you, if you go in that fucking room and you give them 100% of whatever it is, even if it's bad, but you give 100%, he's like, you might not get that job, but they'll never fucking forget you. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he basically tells a story of how he went in to be a pirate and he just fucking like knew he wasn't going to get it, but he just like went all out, 100% all in. And a year later, he got a different job because they always remembered the dude that like was nuts at the fucking thing,
Right. Right.
And I feel like a lot of things that I do, like I don't even know how to pinpoint them, but like to say what I'm afraid of. But it's like we're so afraid of really putting ourselves out there. But for what reason? Like if you went to a fucking stand-up comedy show and a dude bombed, not only do you not really care, like as long as the guy wasn't a dick, you know what I mean? Like if he didn't get up there and go like tell you 4 racist jokes and leave. But if he went up and he was like told you 4 jokes that were horrible,
Right.
you kind of just feel a little bad for the guy. But you don't like your day isn't ruined and you can forget about him real fast and you give him props for trying, But yet why is it that I still have 100% fear of like failing when that's what you're supposed to do? You know what I mean? You're
Right.
supposed to fail. A Kobe Bryant quote is if you're afraid to fail, then you will. You know what I mean? And
Right.
somebody might take that as like, some type of confidence level. Like if you're afraid to fail, like then you're just going to fail. But I think what that means is like, if your biggest fear is failure, then that means that you won't even attempt things because you're afraid to fail at them. If you can't accept failure in your path, then you'll never learn anything anyway. And you will fail. And you won't fail because of anything other than you won't try, you
Yeah.
know?
You miss 100% of 100% of the shots you don't take.
I mean, and it's like there's some things you just have to accept you can't do, but at least try them first.
Yeah. I mean, that's a life. It is what it is. I
I
feel
feel like
like
this was a sad one. This was a
uh
weird one.
yeah, this was like a therapy session
Yeah,
almost.
but the weird part about this one is there were some really beautiful moments, kind of like bookended with some dead moments and shit. But there's a beauty in this one too.
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly one of those ones where I think, uh, first of all, like I said, I've been drinking all night, so I'm sure that's not helping. But there's I don't know. I don't really know how there's like this weird thing in me that like sometimes I don't articulate myself the proper way. Like I don't get out what I'm feeling. I can't express what I'm feeling in words at times. So sometimes it becomes complicated. And I don't know. As I'm getting older, I'm feeling it's becoming more and more difficult, especially in this climate, because it's like you don't not only do I not know how to express myself in certain ways, now I don't know how to express myself in ways that I'm not going to get canceled or offend someone. It's
Yeah, and
like,
especially if you really don't like, that's what's fucked up is a lot of this bullshit that's going on. It hurts the people that are willing to engage and like are willing to learn. So I mean, I get exactly what you're saying. It's like I actually feel a lot of times when I don't have words, it's because I'm afraid to use the ones I do have, you
right,
know?
right.
And going back to your thing of questions and all, that's kind of what I mean is like, dude, there's a lot of people right now sitting in circles of people that are too afraid to ask certain questions because there's a fear of repercussion for saying the wrong thing.
Yeah.
And so going back to when you said, what are we here for in a sense, is like, well, I want that guy to know he's not alone, and don't, it doesn't mean he has to engage. It doesn't mean he has to whatever, but like, if you can't change the people around you or whatever, just, don't try and change yourself, you know, keep searching for the truth or whatever. And I also think a lot of this shit, dude, is gonna pass. This is just the longest that we've been stuck in something. I mean, think about how many things that we've seen happen and be like the main thing. In 6 months, they're gone. This has been like 3 fucking years of people really fucking attacking things that were normal 2 years ago,
Right, right.
Whereas, like, I feel like most of our lives, the things that were under attack were people still acting like it's 1940, like that guy needs to change. I feel like for some reason people love to attack certain people, but it even as much as it, I don't want to go where I'm about to go, but it's just like, the people that are really the problem seem to like never be held accountable. And the people that you see, facing backlash for certain things, it's like the guy didn't mean it. Like in other words, it would be like Robert Downey Jr. getting banned from something because he made that Tropic Thunder.
Right.
It's like, dude, like Robert Downey Jr. is probably he probably is a big supporter of BLM, probably a big supporter of the left, probably a very good guy in his regular life. You know what I mean? Probably does a lot of good for people. And it's like what he, like clearly deciding to attack his character for that would be, meaningless. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
But he's the kind of guy that gets attacked. Meanwhile, they're, the people that actually are doing things that are negative and actually would use words in ways that would actually be disgusting. And I don't know who they are. I don't know. I'm not saying that they're doing it and they're not being held accountable. What I mean is like you're wasting your time. You're pointing something out, and it's stupid. I experience it with car bombs. You ever have a car bomb?
An Irish car bomb.
Okay. You ever have one?
Yeah.
Every once in a while, some fucking hardy tardy fucking Irish American fucking wannabe will actually say, you call it car bombs? And I'm like, yeah. Then sits there and explains to everybody how fucked up that is, and then says to me something like, well, would you like it if I called it a 9/11 suicide bomber or something? And I'm like, dude, like the whole world's calling it car bombs. It doesn't, I'm not mocking the troubles of fucking Ireland and England and the IRA or whatever, like, but
And
it's like you could see that that person knows that you're not, he knows that you're innocently doing something that everybody does, whatever, but he also knows the attention he gets because he can't wait to attack you and then
right.
explain where the he can't wait to do it. He can't wait to turn around to the guy next to me and explain that shit. And the person's like, "Oh, I'll never call it that again." And he doesn't give a fuck. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it reminds me of like on The Sopranos when uh Tony Soprano's therapist is Italian and she's at her home having a conversation with her family about how she's treating someone, an Italian American, he's in the mafia, and they're like offended because like he gives Italians a bad name, because he's in the mafia. You know what I mean? He's like, oh well, blah blah blah, and it's like, look, dude, like if you're that person, I, like you're kind of one of those people that like you're delicate, you're fragile. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? Like there isn't anything like it was called an Irish car bomb for a reason. For whatever reason that is, it happened and existed at one period of time. People aren't taking that as though Irish people were just constantly putting car bombs in vehicles and that's that.
Well, dude, it would be like saying to an Italian guy, "Oh, you're Italian, like 100% Italian." He says, "Yeah," or my grandmom is, or something. And you were to say to him, "Oh man, you probably grew up on like pasta and really good meatballs and whatever." Could you imagine that guy being like, "Why the fuck you think that's how I grew up?" You know what I mean? And next thing you know, explaining to people how fucking racist that is, and it's like, just, you know what I mean? And it's, I kind of see things like that sometimes where I'm like, this is ridiculous. This is a waste of time. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's stupid because I mean, we all have stereotypes. Every nationality has some things about us that like people are like, oh, you Irish people, you Italian people, black people, Asian people, Jewish people, whatever. There's all some stereotypes. And like if you get generally offended by those things, I think I think there are some mental issues or there's some deep-seated issues within you that you need to handle more than the person that spoke out of place.
Yeah. And
You
then
know what
that
I'm saying?
that goes back to the Jordan Peterson thing about like, if you can't correct your issues, don't preach to the world, you know, what they should be doing. If you can't handle your own shit, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I think that's what people do. Like, it's so weird too. People in the human mind is so weird that it's like, I don't know why people like, dude, talking about the N word. I mean, that's a little bit different, but we are going in the right direction with it. Where it's like I understand that, and I've come to a place with that where it's like, look, it's so controversial that I don't care about the word, and B, I'm not gonna fucking say it,
But even but he,
but
I'm
but
not
but this is what I'm saying. But to ruin a college girl's life because you found a video of her rapping to a Biggie Smalls song and she uses his lyrics,
right.
that's crazy. That's crazy. And so what I mean is you're going to attack that girl who idolizes your culture, idolizes one of your heroes, and kind of thinks that making that video, like most 9 times out of 10, she's trying to say like I'm down. You know what I mean? And beating her up is like just attacking an ally. You know what I mean? Now you could tell her you don't like it. You can tell her whatever, but It's like, what use is it to attack that person other than to feel some type of power yourself? You know?
Exactly. And the worst, like the one of the most glaring examples of that in recent memory was a few years ago where Kendrick Lamar brought a fan on stage to, rap along with his lyrics, and the person was white, and they dropped the N word in the song. And he was like, whoa, whoa, you can't say that. And I was like, bro, you just brought this person on. They're singing, clearly, they are a fan of yours. They're singing your lyrics verbatim. Like, if you're holding on to that that racist narrative at that point, that's an issue with you, man. Like, you have a white fan that adores you, that knows all of your words, and is singing it in the context that you said it, not outside of that. Not it's not ER. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you're gonna flip that and be like, nah, 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 man. Like, nah, you can't say that. It's like
Well, that's what I mean. It's like a
that
setup.
that's what I'm saying. Like, it's almost like this thing. It's like, if that's going to be a part of your culture, and then you're going to sell that culture to other cultures, and then they use it, like, you're pimping yourself out with that word. You know what I'm saying? Like, you're setting yourself up for that, and then getting upset by it. It's
And
like
and
it's
and
like
I
you're still, like, in many ways, there's a bigger picture to it, where, like, that, and that's what I'm saying. Like, there, in this conversation that I listened to, it's like there is still, and even going back to Kanye, there is still a slave mentality that's kind of like wraps around it, like, that this word is holding. I mean, look, I can tell you, just from personal experience, and just as a human being, I mean, most people, they will often hurt the people that they love the most, right? Like, I've as a teenager growing up, and my mom punishes me, I'm like, I fucking hate you, you're a bitch, and you say horrible things about your mother. You know what I'm saying? Like, you say to, like, your best friend, like, you get in an argument with your best friend, you're like, I'll fucking kill you, you fucking pussy ass motherfucker. Like, you say horrible things to your friend in that moment when you're in the heat of an argument or whatever. So it's no surprise, like, if somebody was to say that, even, like, even just let's say, I don't know, somebody cuts a black person, maybe cuts you off or something, and that white person says it, or whatever, or just any kind of interaction between two people of different nationalities, and they use whatever word. It's like, is there really hate in their heart, or is it the heat of the moment, and it's just, I'm pissed at this person for taking my parking spot, or somebody that did me wrong at that moment. Like, a lot of times, I don't think that those people at those moments are necessarily horrible people. They just say things to piss somebody off because they did them wrong.
well, I always use this as an example. If first off, you said whenever you get angry at anyone, even if it's the closest thing person to you, you immediately seek for the lowest way to hurt their feelings.
Right, right,
And so when you said like you get in a fight with your friend, right? The example I always use is if you get in a fight with your friend and he's fat,
right,
what's the first thing out of your mouth?
right,
You fat fuck, right?
right, right.
Does that mean you fucking hate fat people? Now, does that mean you hurt your friend's feelings and there's some apologizing to be done? Yeah, maybe. If your friend's still offended by it, if you're still friends with them.
And you were still friends with him despite the fact that he was fat. That didn't matter to you. You know what I mean? But something happened and you used it.
Yeah. And so I don't think that that makes it okay, especially if you use that word. But what I can't stand is then that guy loses his job. He's fucking considered a racist for the rest of his life. Like he's just like, in other words, he uses the word and then he becomes a racist. You know what I mean?
Right, right.
And that part of it's wrong, you know?
Yeah.
And maybe the guy is fucking racist. Maybe it's worthy of having the conversation with him or whatever, or whoever wants to have it, you know? But I also am a big believer in like, look, I mean, that word's it's just you can't say it, like you just can't say it. And I'm not saying you shouldn't be able to. I could listen to someone argue as to why it shouldn't be that way. But what I'm saying is I understand it's a losing argument and I don't
Yeah.
care about the word, you know?
Right. No, absolutely.
But a
Absolutely.
perfect example of what you were saying is what I hate, where but I love Biggie Smalls and whatever, and you sing along. And it's like, why do I always have to be like, why can't people understand? I'm just singing the song, you know?
Yeah.
Why do I have to be aware of like it's an art, it's poetry, it's whatever,
Right.
And then there's the argument that I can't stand of like, but then other people can use whatever words they want. And if we start playing these kind of games, it's like, then other people should be in just as much trouble for making the same type of using the same kind of words. And then it falls into, well, you can't because you're this, like white people can't be offended by words because they're the oppressor and whatever. And again, it's just a thing where I'm not arguing that we should or shouldn't or whatever, but the thing is I think that I just wish that the people that deserve to be humiliated for thinking and saying words like that seem to not be the people that are being. Like when you said that the girl got brought up or the guy got brought up at the whatever dude's concert, it's like you took a fan and then told your fan that he stepped out of line. But meanwhile, the people that really need to talking to are the ones that won't even listen to your music because of the color of your skin.
Right.
And
Right.
use that word in saying it.
Right. Right.
And so now I don't know where you're going to find them people. I don't fucking know. And I do agree that like a lot of real racism is silent. Like I do agree that there's racism out there and it's silent. What I don't like is if you have to live what you've like if you expect other people not to use racist derogatory terms to you, then you should be someone who lives it. So I understand. I would never argue to be able to use that word, but if something else, like there's people out there right now that say like certain things hurt their feelings, yet they don't seem to have a problem. Like right now we have a big thing going on with the left and the right. They called us Hitler for fucking 5 years. Now people on the right are being canceled for comparing, mask laws to stuff that Hitler did, you
Mhm.
know? And it's like, how are you crying about this and it didn't offend you before? So that's when I get mad is like, there's people out there that are like, don't ever use that word. And they don't use it in their music and they don't think it should be used. Just like that guy who seemed to be uh, willing to have a conversation with that rapper dude, you know?
Right.
His statement was, I don't fucking use it and I don't think you should and whatever. As long as he lives it, and that's the problem with like all these things. Even when you go back to like global warming, and we're not getting off topic. I'm just saying we said this earlier where it's about these people that don't fit, they don't live the way that they want everybody else to live. And there's a fucking article that came out with like what Bernie Sanders' demands are when he goes places. And besides the fact that like he takes private jets and everything, like he demands that every room he's in is 60 degrees. And it's like a guy who's telling you that you shouldn't be wasting energy and whatever wants the AC pumped. And then there's somebody out there that would be like, oh God, so what? And
Right.
it's like, no, like I understand it sounds petty, but it's the petty argument I have to give you back, because if everyone out there that believes in global warming still believes that they could, like, if you believe it and you want people to follow you and you're telling people that it's okay to fucking pump the AC up to 60 degrees, well, there's your fucking problem, because like, why would you be allowed different rules than everybody else?
Right.
And so if you live it in your life, like that, they're the people that I have to take into consideration. Like, I can't think of anybody offhand, but like, if some guy's telling you global warming is going to kill the earth and blah, blah, and then you find out that like he lives his life in a way where he tries to leave no carbon footprint, only eats seasonal vegetables, has his own compost in his house, it's like, I don't agree with you, but now I'm going to see it as like, we just have a difference of opinion.
Right.
But if that guy was demanding other people do things and he wasn't doing them, I mean, I'm sorry. I have to point out how hypocritical you are. And it also should take away value in your argument,
Absolutely.
All right, dude. I say this has been a very interesting one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, again, I was drinking and we listen, it's been 2 weeks or so since we've had an episode, so like we just had to get on and ran a little bit.
I think if we were together in person, we would have cried and kissed each other.
That would have been lovely. That would have been fantastic.
How old was the kid that his birthday was?
16.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, sweet 16.
Any hot little 16-year-old girls?
No, there wasn't. It was just a few little, family and friends.
I'm only kidding, by the way, everyone.
Yeah, yeah.
But all right, well, guys, make sure you like, subscribe, tell us your thoughts on this episode. I feel like we really dug deep into our souls and our hearts for this one, and I hope you hung in there with us through the roller coaster ride that it was.
Yeah, we just try to give it to you straight, no chaser. That's all we do.
Straight no chaser, baby. Well, at least we weren't reading on this one.
Yeah. There wasn't a long.
Tommy probably thinks Tommy. I hope you don't think I'm really being serious with that. I think we should do more of that. I think I should do more reading in my own life.
Well, I recommend some things, but what are you gonna do?
Yeah. All right. Well, love you, Tommy. Love you guys. Thanks for listening. Please like and subscribe. It means a lot to us. All right.
Yes, we appreciate all the love and support.
Yeah, and if you have any comments on anything we said, please make sure you get them to us somehow. All right, guys. Love you.
Yes, comments, criticism.